Everyone. As Russell said, I'm Henrique. I've been in this business of consultancy, coaching and learning solutions, specifically within project, program, portfolio, change management, as I like to describe it, going up or down, depending on which perspective you're looking at it, for about 14 years. And my journey has been very interesting because I've actually developed as this Agile buzz grew. So I've seen it all the way through from its inception, which is where we're going to start in terms of how Agile fits into project management, all the way through to its maturing, which is what's happening now. So the inception of Agile really comes from DSDM, which then became the Agile Manifesto, as Russell talked about. Things like XP programming, things like, can we be more flexible? Some of the improvement stuff that came out of the East, specifically Kanban, Kaizen. Yeah? How can we be more lean? How can we make sure that what works continue to work, and how can we challenge what doesn't work and improve on that? So there's a lot of very interesting stuff behind it, and then you've got your lean, you've got your scrum, all of these different best practices that came out and became what now we know as the philosophy called Agile, because it's grown exponentially, and that is the point of Agile, is that it grows. It's an evolutionary process. It's not something that we have a big picture or a piece of art in our heads and it's there, that's where we want to go. No, it's part of it. The journey is just as important as the end result when it comes to Agile. And this is where the core principles of Agile really come into play. One of my favorite principles within, I'm not going to take these in order, okay? One of my favorite principles within the Agile core principles is continuous improvement culture. So Agile really builds on this idea of reflecting, adapting, learning, embracing change as part of the feedback. So change is not something that we're afraid of. Criticism is not something that we're afraid of when we work in an Agile environment. It's about, yeah, we want to hear you. If you've got a conflicting point of view, great, let's bring it to the table. That will make us better. That will make it better for us. That will make it better for you. And all of this is enhanced by these empowered integrated teams, which is one of the other core principles of Agile. They're self-organizing, they're highly collaborative, they make decisions within their own rights. So they have the ability to discuss things amongst themselves and say, well, actually, although the business said that this is the direction that we should be moving in, now we might want to shape this project slightly differently, because what we're hearing from our customers, what we're hearing from other areas of the business is that our services, our products are going in another direction. The market's going in another direction. This then links in to this iterative development life cycle, which is build, design, test, release, get feedback, repeat. It's very simple, it's very straightforward, but when it comes to applying it, it's extremely powerful. It's all about small increments. We build it step by step, we build it together, we listen to our customers as we're doing it. And by doing all of this, you provide greater customer value. There is alignment of project, product, and team visions. And the vision is not driven downwards. It's not pushed upon people. There is actually bi-directional communication, which is an integrated part of the Agile philosophy. So we're not creating these mechanisms for the sake of creating them. We're not giving forms for our clients to fill and say, oh, fill this issue log if you think there's something wrong with the product. No, we're constantly involving them in this. And we're saying, what quality do you want? What features work best for you? What features don't work best? Perhaps we need to reprioritize. So these are some of the very interesting things that the Agile philosophy brings to projects in terms of core principles. And as I said, in terms of the life cycle, it's actually really straightforward. We have a high-level definition of where we want to go, what kind of product or service we want to deliver. We build it, we release it, we get feedback, rinse and repeat. Sounds pretty straightforward, right? How do we do that in terms of the intricacies of it? Well, the style of working within Agile has adaptive planning. So you don't spend a lot of time up front in planning, in requirements gathering. You have some really funky things like mad, sad dad. Trust me, these are actual terms within Agile project management, okay? Mad, sad dad. management approach definitions. You've got other little things which I don't have the time to talk about because we have limited time, but it's really interesting because it's evolutionary, it's high level, it's light, yeah? It's all about the teams getting the work done, getting value out there, getting this cycle running. You've got things like prioritized requirements list. You've got Moscow. How many of you have heard of Moscow? Yeah? So it's about understanding what must we have? What could we have? Yeah? What should we have? And what do we want to have? Now, traditionally it says won't, but I prefer to have want because we want it, but we can't necessarily get it now. So all of these interesting things actually change how we approach variables within Agile project management. Typically, within the traditional or waterfall approach, you would have features that are more fixed. You would spend a lot of time in that startup initiation phase of projects, getting a requirements list, understanding what the customer quality expectations are, understanding what the acceptance criteria are for the final project product, and that will evolve to some extent. The issue that can create is that, as you may have found in your own project environments, and I certainly have found in mine, there will be a lot of change that will come through that will require a lot of replanning, oftentimes a lot of rebudgeting, and then this starts to disalign as the project progresses. So timescales change, costing changes. The Agile proposition, or the DSDM, Dynamic Systems Development proposition, is simpler. You have fixed time, fixed cost, and you vary your features. It will not affect the overall quality proposition. What you're doing is you're prioritizing, you're creating a priority requirements list upon the features that are required. These features are evolving in terms of what will give us the quality proposition that we want. And that's really interesting. That's a key change in terms of how we approach variables within Agile projects. All of this is underpinned by this idea of incremental delivery. And how does that work? Well, we've already talked about the iterative project planning. It doesn't happen up front. You don't think about the whole project life cycle at the beginning. You plan it as you go along. As you plan and go along, you start to deliver some stuff. As you develop and deliver, you have this frequent communication and team ownership. So teams are making decisions. They're collaborating with each other. They don't necessarily have to go through layers of management to approve something. They have a discussion in a daily stand-up. How many of you are familiar with that term, daily stand-up? Yeah? Have a chat, 15 minutes. What are you doing? What are your obstacles? What are we looking to achieve? How can we make this better? Bang, let's do it. Go. It's that simple. With that, you release something quick. You get it out there. People test it. People evaluate it. You get an incremental functional product. It builds as the project develops. Then you start to have dynamics in the product requirements. Well, actually, we thought this was a must. Now we realize this is perhaps a should or a could. Let's change that. Let's go through another cycle. And you have this continuous feedback going on. And that's the beauty of Agile, is that it does work in this way. It's dynamic. It's fast moving. It's exciting. Some insights of recent research from around the world about Agile projects. Almost 3/4, 71% of organizations are using Agile approaches sometimes, often, or always. That's by the PMI, Project Management Institute. As I said earlier, project management, and that's supported by a piece that was done by Gartner recently, it's reaching the peak of its inflated expectations. It's not a buzz anymore. We've got concrete case studies that we can look at. We've got key insights. We've got statistics that are showing, well, does it work? Where does it work? Where does it not work? Where does it need to be rethought? Where does it take more planning, more thinking? Where can it be applied off the shelf, so to speak? Yeah, just plug it in and it will run fine. Over 27.4, so about 25% of manufacturing organizations rely solely on Agile. And more than half of them have a mix of agile principles and methodologies and your standard approaches. So that's really interesting. It's quite strong in manufacturing culture, but that's no surprise. Fabrizio is going to talk about some of the continuous process improvement side of things, and that's lean. Lean came out of a lot of manufacturing, particularly on the east side of the world, Japan, China. There's exciting stuff coming around in China called Shanshai. I don't know if you guys have heard of that. That's really, really interesting stuff. Again, I don't have the time to go through it now, but it's fascinating what the Chinese are doing nowadays and how they're turning this proposition on its head. 63% of failed agile implementations are about a clash of the agile philosophy culture and the business culture. Because, as Russell said, CEOs go, or key decisions makers go, let's go agile. But they don't actually understand that it's a huge undertaking, that it takes a mind shift. It's a paradigm shift. It's not as simple as let's go agile. Netherlands and Belgium, they're often seen as open-minded thinkers, and 76% of the businesses out there believe that agile projects will outnumber waterfall projects by 2020. Now, I don't know if you guys know this, but any of you have a presence in the Netherlands, Belgium, that sort of region? Yeah? So they actually do a lot of high-tech stuff. They actually work a lot with leading-edge technologies, particularly music, gaming industry, software development industry, all of these high-tech, fast-moving, dynamic industries based in the Netherlands. So these guys are seeing that these are the industries where it works, and I'm going to talk about a bit more about that when we get into our conclusions. 28% greater success rate in agile projects than traditional waterfall projects. That's what PwC is telling us. Well, is it all projects? I'm not sure. As we saw in the initial little slide, is agile fit for us? That is the question that we have to ask ourselves. Yep. Particularly useful, agile is technology industries, technology environments, software development, IT. In terms of communication service providers that have bimodal IT, 93%, that is a huge amount, rely on agile methodologies. There is a good reason behind that. I won't have time to go into it either because there's more interesting stuff I want to talk about in terms of some case studies that are very high profile. And I'm going to spend a little bit of time delving into those. Teams. That is a core principle of Agile. And change management. Yeah, some change people in the room. I know I sat with some guys here. Change management is all about people. It's about winning hearts and minds. It's about a people-focused proposition. And people often forget that people are the raw material of all money. A wise man once told me that, and I never forgot it. I always remember it. 50% more teams are motivated more by team targets than actual company or even individual targets or goals. So when they work together, when they come together and they're working towards an objective, they have much greater invested interest in that. And Agile, through its empowered team structure, through its continuous communication and collaborative environment, it provides that solid foundation for that to flourish naturally. It's not forced. It's natural. You're doing a daily stand-up. You're looking people in the eye. You're talking about things. You have focused meetings. You're not sitting there wearing a T-shirt that says, I survived another meeting that could have been an email, and just going, yeah? No, you're engaged in it. You're talking about real issues. You're really collaborating. This is particularly interesting. Any of you involved in artificial intelligence? Blockchain? Yeah? Any of these kind of funky new technologies that are coming out? So, again, Gartner has published something that has said that by 2030, and that is a conservative estimate, artificial intelligence will automate 80% of routine agile work. What does that mean? People have time to look forward. People have time to be more strategic, to be more engaged in this people side of development, rather than sitting there pushing products and services through processes, through technology. Yeah, and it is shocking how much AI is already able to do when you look into some of that stuff. I can't keep up with it, and I consider myself relatively technically savvy. I can't keep up with it. And that's not even mentioning things like virtual reality. Yeah? There's been a very interesting case study recently of virtual reality being used to treat PTSD patients. So people, war veterans that have gone out to war and they've come back and they can't reintegrate into society, they put them in a virtual reality environment using some agile frameworks to support that. And they take them through little projects of everyday life, how to reintegrate with that. It's fantastic stuff. And that brings us to some key case studies. And I want to spend a little bit of solid time on this because these are some very interesting names that you can see up there. First one is Google. Now, Google has, as with all of these case studies, they've all developed their own in-house flavor of an agile philosophy. And Google's particularly works around this concept of prototyping. And prototyping is described as building the right it and not necessarily building it right. So again, if we cast our minds back to that approach to variable slide, it's turning that proposition upside down. It's not saying, what do we need to build from the start? It's saying, make sure what we build is the right fit. We'll get there. It's a journey. And they do that by incorporating failure as a key part of the process. So failure is seen as a success. Are any of you guys familiar with Prince 2 in the room? Yeah? So do you guys know about starting up a project? One of the processes of Prince 2? One of the key purposes of starting up a project is, if I'm not worth it as a project, can me as soon as possible. That's a win. That's a good thing. And this is the principle that Agile applies. If it's not working, let's get rid of it as quickly as possible. Otherwise, we're just wasting time and money that could be invested elsewhere in much more successful ways. It's welcomed. It's encouraged. You learn as you go. They've developed this 5-stage design sprint. Any of you heard the terminology sprint? Yeah, so that's the Scrum terminology. You've got Agile PM, which uses other terminologies. I personally am a bit picky and particular, so I use a bit of both. Yeah, so I like some from Agile PM, I like some from Scrum, and I pick them as I prefer. They've got this 5-step approach, and it's all about unpacking something, sketching it, deciding, prototyping or pretotyping it, testing it, getting that loop going. It's particularly interesting because they say that within Google, the idea of requirements building slowly by people playing with products, and that's the idea. They're literally playing with products. They're taking existing products, they're taking it into a sandbox environment, they're playing with it, they've got new ideas that are coming through. That's encouraged. You've got a new idea, play with it, see where it goes, to see where it takes you. We'll give you that environment to be able to do that. Then we've got IBM. Now, IBM is a little bit different from the other case studies because IBM has some level of governance around it. So it's not so much a core agile proposition or a pure agile proposition, as I like to call it. They've actually mixed and matched it. Okay? So you can see on the outer rim here, you've got your traditional governance structures. You've got your continuous business planning, you've got your steering committees or your boards, or your gateways, whatever you want to call them. But then, within that also you have collaborative development working side by side with it. Notice they haven't put that in the inner rim, which is where we are developing and testing, operating, deploying. So that's your traditional agile product development lifecycle. Yeah, so that's how you traditionally develop agile products within or services within projects. They've actually got it side by side. So they are dealing with that whole issue of communication across management layers, but they're still making sure that the governance structure is there. You've got continuous monitoring, so that will link to your quality management systems of your organizations. They're integrated into this. They're not forgotten. Continuous customer feedback and optimization. Oh, that's a bit more agile, isn't it? But notice how it's all integrated and it's spanning across. And they've done that by taking concepts from design thinking of IBM's own internal design thinking approach, Agile, and DevOps, which is, again, something new and interesting that is coming out there, which is being described as a culture of development. And it's very much got many, many parallels with this Agile world. One of the most interesting case studies are now coming up, and that's Spotify and Valve. And these are my favorites because they are so interesting in how they've applied it. Now, Spotify, who here uses Spotify? I do. Yeah? How many of you use Spotify Premium? I do. It's good, isn't it? Yeah. So Spotify, they've introduced Agile in their own very unique way, and they've got the funkiest names for it. So they've got tribes, squads, trios, chapters, alliances, guilds. Now it all sounds very hippie, but there is a very good reason behind this stuff. And the reason for that is that each one of these, although they have their own specific missions, and I won't have time to go through all of them, but I'll try to give you as much of an overview so you understand this whole collaborative team structure that goes on in Agile. So trios are your minimum structure. They're not shown on this diagram. That's obviously 3 people working together on a specific, perhaps a new idea, perhaps something that is just intuitive and it hasn't actually been plugged in to a product owner and linked in with a specific product or service that already exists within the Spotify structure. Then you have your chapters, which are your minimum structures that sit across a development of what is the most common structure, and that's a squad. And a squad can be anything from 6 to 12 people. Traditionally, it's about 6 to 8. And they're all working towards a specific product owner and specific products or services that exist within Spotify or that are being developed within Spotify projects. And then you have things like, well, actually these guys and these guys and these guys, they went out for lunch and they had this great idea. It doesn't fit into any of the existing missions of the squads or the chapters. It doesn't really fit within the tribe structure, and the tribe structure is just a collection of squads and chapters, as you can see, but they've all got a shared mission. Yeah, so it doesn't fit into the shared mission of any of these existing team structures. Well, let's guild it up. Let's get a guild together and let's start working on this. Let's think about new ways of doing it. How do we integrate it? Perhaps it's something that's going to integrate between a number of different tribes. Well, how many tribes? How do we need to cross-function that? And that is projects, isn't it? It's cross-functional. It's bringing in different areas of the organization. And perhaps if you were to create a structured project to be able to do something like this, you couldn't. Because there's no physical way of actually putting these people together, even in a matrix, in a virtual matrix, and getting them to work on this. It will take so long to think about the structure of a project team to do this, that by the time you've done it, you've already wasted so much time where you could have actually been looking at the features and the quality and what this is going to help the business deliver. And it's all about improving the business. It's aligned to the strategy of the business. And then you have alliances, which again is not on this, which are huge project undertakings, but again, they're not structured projects. Alliances are about, well, this is a huge undertaking. We don't know how many people it's going to take, but it's a lot more than a guild. Normally it's somewhere around 100-ish people or more. Let's get our heads together. Let's see what we can come up with. And then we have the most extreme example of Agile out there that I am aware of, and that is Valve. How many of you are familiar with Valve? Just me and what's your name? John. Just John and I then. Okay. So how many of you are familiar with Microsoft? Ha! Look at that. Valve was created by ex-Microsoft employees Gabe Newell and Mike Harrington. It was created in 1996. It's a relatively new organization. And their proposition is they're an entertainment company, they're a channel distribution company, and they're a gaming company. This is lifted directly from their employee handbook. I kid you not. It's primarily visual, and it's designed like that on purpose. On their handbook, they say that their profitability is higher, and I have to refer to this, than Google, Amazon, or Microsoft in terms of per employee revenue generated. They have a very tight-knit team. They produce a lot of high-value products and services with a very lean structure in terms of teams. And this is literally what Gabe Newell and Mike Harrington came up with. We don't have a boss. We work on a boss-free culture. What does that mean? Very simple. What project do you want to work on? Oh, I fancy that one today. All right, unplug your desk, move over to that team, plug it back in, and get cracking. Okay, well, who do I talk to? What do I do? If you've got an idea, discuss it with your coaches, with your Agile coaches, or with your colleagues. Figure out a way of getting it together. Go and develop it together. Ship it out. Get some feedback. See what we hear from our customers. Rinse and repeat. Pretty simple. Right? It sounds like that, but it doesn't quite work in every organization. This is one of the most extreme examples, and this happens a lot in the tech industry, which is fast-paced, fast-moving, very casual. So we need to think about what industry are we working with? What are the requirements? Notice the differences between these distinct case studies. Now, the interesting part of this is that what they actually do, which is fascinating at Valve, they actually shift the overall strategic direction of the organization based on this movement of people. So when they notice that a number of people are moving towards a product or a service or a project, they will actually shift their investment focus and shift their resource focus into that to the point where the organization as a whole practically is working primarily on this one project or these few projects for years on end. And they've become leading edge at what they do. I mean, it's amazing. Again, I don't have the time to go into it, but it's amazing the amount of money that they're making and how far ahead they are from their competitors in the market that they operate in. Some conclusions which also have some points of interest, and perhaps we'll open up some questions that you guys might want to ask. Where Agile or pure Agile may not work, or where it might be a better idea to think about blending Agile and waterfall approaches. Environments where you need to agree product requirements very early on. What are some key examples of that, where you really need to think about what you're integrating, what your dependencies are? Anyone in the room?
Safety critical systems.
Safety critical systems, absolutely. Infrastructure perhaps, civil engineering.
Yeah.
We've got a building site, there's very specific requirements, it has to fit in that lot. Yeah, it's going to integrate there. So we need to think carefully about applying Agile to these environments. It's not, as I said, an off-the-shelf straight plug. You need very specific, detailed documentation on each phase of the project. You have high regulatory requirements around it. Perhaps you're working with government. Yeah? Perhaps you have a gateway approach to actually moving from each phase of the project. So it's not evolutionary, it's very much regulated. It's, well, we'll release the budget once you prove to us that the last stage has been appropriately delivered and you've appropriately planned the next stage. So we need to think carefully about how to apply Agile in those environments. The benefits of waterfall in these environments is that it gives greater confidence in terms of the project product impact, because you have it all documented, you have it all very, very detailed, thought out. But the benefits of agility in these environments is that you actually have much greater impact and access to stakeholders, to contractors, to subcontractors, to how the teams are developing the products that will form that final project product. So, okay, we need to think very carefully about the blueprint of this building. We need to work with the architectures in an enormous amount of detail to agree the requirements before delivery. But do we have to do that for every phase of the project? Or could it be that once we've got that initial set out agreed, we can then work in an Agile way within the other phases of the project? Where has Agile worked particularly well off the shelf or in pure Agile format? In environments where streamlined communication and feedback loops are really useful. And that's particularly the case in fast-moving tech environments, creative environments, so you've got software development, creative environments like the game industry, the music industry, and last year, for the first time in its history, the game industry has produced more revenue than the film industry, which is very, very interesting. 138 billion versus 136 billion. And 51% of that is mobile games. How many of you here have a little game on your mobile phone that you play on the tube every now and again? Be honest, yeah? It's unbelievable. Organizations with flatter management structures, again, that's more catered around those dynamic, fast-moving environments. More focused documentation, less documentation. Yeah, mad, sad dad. You don't need 100 million different approaches and strategies to deliver a project. Empowered teams in a pure agile environment make faster decisions, and therefore that makes change control and change management much, much smoother and easier to manage, much less bureaucratic. And that's it, guys.